everybody. So for those following me, here's an update video on the amplifier I'm building, home-built amplifier, as I'm learning about different amplifier types with the goal of eventually making my own SiC-based amplifier. Where I'm at right now is working on a Class AB amplifier. My goal is to build one from scratch like I've been doing with circuit boards and drive some custom enclosures and little speakers that I'm building to get this to sound really, really good and understand how everything works. I'm brand new to this, so if you know a ton about amplifiers and see any errors I'm making, please let me know. I'd love to incorporate your feedback to make this even better. So let me go over the schematic really quick for those that are still following. So I've broken out the design into 3 phases, more will come. So first of all, I have a preamp. The idea is that because I am using a little phone input here, so this is the auxiliary of my phone, I'm only working with 600 millivolts worth of power. It's very, very tiny, and what I really need to do is to amplify the signal before it's actually useful for the amplifier. So I'm using an op amp here, and I have 2 rails, first of all, a 24 volt positive and 24 volt negative going into the entire amplifier. So I'm using a dual rail voltage op amp, and I am actually amplifying the signal up to 10 volts from that 600 millivolts. So that's the first stage of the amplifier. The second stage is feeding that into the emitter driver. So I have audio quality drivers here, NPN, NPNP, where I'm driving that 10 volts worth of voltage into them. They then pass that on to the actual drivers. These are the SC5200s and SA190 1943s, and they're the ones that will be actually pushing the power to the speakers. So again, very simple preamp, go from my phone auxiliary up to a usable signal, drive emitter drivers, which then drive the main drivers that will be pushing power to the speakers. For the voltage rails, I'm going to be using these very cheap Amazon switching power supplies that are meant for LEDs. They're capable of putting out 24 volts, 5 amps, so a total of about 120 watts. So my design constraints are I need to stay under this threshold. Current design gets me to about 4.5 amps, so 10% tolerance right under where I want to be. My secondary goal is to be able to drive a 2 ohm load. I don't want to go lower than that, so that'd be enough for the 2 drivers I have. So add a 2 ohm load with these power supplies and the setup I have. I'm currently pushing about 4.5 amps of power at about 8 volts on the output. That gives me a total of 40 watts. So that's 40 watts from this amplifier. If I wanted to push out a lot more power, which I can with these drivers, all I would have to do is to have a different voltage stage to provide, what you see in car amplifiers going up, 60, 100, 150, etc. That's where this power output really explodes, but then you have to contend with the thermal dissipation issues that come with that. So far my design is meeting my requirements from power supply and also the constraints I have with driving these speakers. I'll be running them in parallel. They're made for about 30 watts max here, a little bit less here. So combined, if I'm pushing a clean 40 watts to both, they should be beyond loud enough and should be a perfect pairing. So I have Heatsinks ready to go. I have my transistors ready to go, brand new. A ton of smoothing capacitors. Ton of resistors for the output for the drivers. So next up, I'm going to be tearing this apart. So my proof of concept single rail worked incredibly well. And I'll be switching to the dual rail now that I have the power supplies. All right, so I have a little Bluetooth receiver that I could put in the amplifier, connected right now. This one's low quality. It only puts out about 200 millivolts maximum. So it's about half of what I was expecting, and I don't have a preamp stage on this. So right now, this has no gain on it. So it's running at 1/10 the power. And here's half of the box that the subwoofer will go into. It's tuned So it should sound amazing for low end and mid frequency, and then I'll make a box for the high, and then another box for the amplifier itself.